Over the last several years, global supply chains have gotten pretty screwed up. But why is that? That's what we're going to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world to reach the third stage of digital transformation success, including supply chain management transformations. Much of what we do is help clients optimize their supply chains, automate their supply chains, and use technology to be better with their supply chains. And one of the interesting things that we've seen over the last several years, and perhaps you felt this too, is how screwed up supply chains are. It's hard to get product, prices are high, there's bottlenecks throughout the supply chain. How often have you gone to the store and tried to get something and had to wait, whether it's groceries or a car or some other specialty item? So the reason for that is because global supply chains are pretty messed up. And what people don't tend to understand is there's a good reason why supply chains are messed up, and there's solutions to it. So what I want to do today is talk about, first of all, what supply chains are. Then I'm going to talk about the history of supply chain management, how the global supply chain as we know it came into existence. And then I'll talk about how it became broken and what we could do to fix it. Now, if you'd like to learn more about supply chain management, I encourage you to read our Guide to Supply Chain Management. It's a resource that we offer for free on our website. You can read that by scanning the QR code right here or go to the links below. First, let's talk briefly about what supply chains are. Supply chains are essentially the way organizations manage getting end products to their customers. And it starts with getting raw materials into the factories. It continues with factories building whatever the end product is. It entails storing the product in warehouses, and it entails getting the product from the warehouses to the customers. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of different components that go into everything I just described. There's the procurement process to get the raw materials. There's the transportation and logistics of getting the raw materials to your warehouse. There's the warehouse management of figuring out where to store your items in the warehouse. And then there's more transportational logistics to get the products from the warehouse to your end customers. So there's procurement, there's logistics, there's shipping, warehouse management, even manufacturing is technically considered part of the supply chain. So there are a lot of moving parts and moving pieces that go into supply chain management. If you'd like to learn a deeper dive, though, into understanding more about supply chain management in more detail, I encourage you to check out this YouTube video right here. It's where I dive into what is supply chain management, and I describe all these items in a lot more detail. But now that we understand what supply chain management is at a high level, let's talk about how this global supply chain as we know it came into existence here in the 2020s. Up until the late 1900s, most countries produced their own products within their own country. So in other words, they sourced materials from their home country, they stored the products in warehouses in their home countries, and most of their customers were in their home countries. Over time, especially in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, organizations realized that they could actually save money and become more efficient if they had other countries do things that they were better at. So for example, in the US, countries like Japan and South Korea were really good at electronics. So you started to see electronics that started to move overseas into Japan and South Korea, and the US would start to buy electric components from those countries because they could produce a better product for cheaper than the US could produce themselves. And this is just one example of many. There's dozens, if not hundreds of examples of industries that have been disrupted or changed by globalization and global supply chains. But the whole theory behind global supply chain management is let's optimize and get the best cost that we can get, the best quality we can get, regardless of where that supplier might be. So that's why now, when you look at the average multinational organization, they're sourcing products from all over the world. They've got raw materials that they're acquiring from all over the world. They have customers all over the world. And so they've got to manage a network that's even larger than what was already complex from the start. Another factor that has contributed to globalization of the supply chain is labor arbitrage. And labor arbitrage is essentially hiring labor from other countries that's cheaper than your home country. And so many Western countries, for example, outsourced a certain amount of labor to other countries like India, Vietnam, Thailand, Mexico, other countries that had lower labor costs. And so when you add all these things up, it creates an opportunity to have a global network of labor, logistics, procurement, and all the different things that go into supply chain management. And when it's working, it works great. As we saw in the 90s and early 2000s, it worked pretty well, and it was pretty seamless. There weren't many big disruptions in supply chain management, but then the world changed, and that's what we'll talk about next. Now, fast forward to the 2020s, and we're seeing that there are severe limitations to global supply chains. COVID is the most obvious example where certain countries shut down, many countries, if not most countries, shut down and weren't able to produce product, at least not reliably, and certainly not as efficiently or effectively as other countries. So when COVID hit, that really disrupted the global supply chain. And even as certain countries opened up, other countries were still closed or had limitations on production, and that completely disrupted the supply chain. In fact, we're still feeling the ripple effect from COVID, believe it or not. 5 years later, we're still feeling the after effect and the aftershock of that massive disruption we saw in the supply chain. Other risks that have been exposed in our global supply chains have been things like wars. We're seeing more war lately than we have in recent years, and that certainly disrupts global supply chains. Some countries are engaging in tariffs right now, which is raising the prices on products that are being brought into their countries. So all this stuff is adding up to create a problem for global supply chains. And I said earlier in this video that when supply chains work globally, they work well, but when there's a disruption, they don't work so well. So now what we're seeing is suddenly these global supply chains, these big expansive networks that have been built over decades, are not nearly as reliable or effective as they used to be. So the next question becomes, what do we do about it? How do we manage our supply chains differently going forward, knowing what we know now? The good news in all of this is that technology is advancing so rapidly that the technology sector is providing us some really good solutions to solve some of these complex supply chain management issues. We've always had supply chain management software. We've had procurement software. We've had transportation logistics management software. We've always had tools that allow us to do our jobs better within supply chain management. But now suddenly you have other systems like ERP systems that provide some of these supply chain management capabilities. But even more importantly, you have more access to tools like artificial intelligence and predictive analytics, things that allow us to proactively address risks in our supply chain. Just as an example, if we think about AI and some of the capabilities it has in looking at external and internal data can tell us when there's a risk in the supply chain, whether it's because a certain country has gone to war or a certain country is imposing tariffs or is at risk of imposing tariffs. AI can proactively identify those risks and help us solve them before they become a problem and before they actually disrupt our supply chain. And I could give you dozens or hundreds of other examples, but those are just a couple really small examples of how technology allows us to optimize supply chains. So what we have to do is look at ways to optimize supply chains to hedge our risks in our supply chain management and ensure that we're using technology to help us move quickly to adjust and adapt to the changing world around us. Now, if you'd like to learn more about supply chain management and the ways technology can further enable and optimize your supply chain, I encourage you to read our Guide to Supply Chain Management. You can read that by scanning the QR code right here or go to the links below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. Over the last it's not 5 years. And certainly not as effectively. So you can imagine how I'm getting redundant there. Let me stop there.